Hey everyone, the real estate numbers are in for Grand Panama and Panama City Beach. I'm Craig Duran with the Duran Group over at Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices. A lot has happened in the condo market over the last 60 days. Real estate generally moves pretty slowly, but there's a lot that's happened considering everything that's going on in the world. So this update is going to be just a touch longer than normal. I want to go a few things with you so you have a good understanding of what's happened very quickly and where things might be headed. First of all, if you haven't been watching any of our updates online regarding coronavirus and real estate, I want you to be very familiar with this chart here. This comes from a company called Showing Time. And Showing Time is a system that real estate agents and brokers use to schedule showing appointments. So if I have to schedule, a buyer wants to go see 5 condos across the beach, instead of calling different agents and offices, we just use one system to schedule all this. What's nice about it is now that we have some data to track, to see just how many people are getting out and looking at real estate. It's a very good predictor because if you think about it, to have a closing, to have a sale, which affects the market, affects pricing and all that, well, we have to have a contract. To have a contract in place, a buyer has to get out and look at real estate. I know it's basic, but being able to look and see the level of showing activity is a very good way to predict what's going to happen in the future, maybe a month or two down the line in the real estate market. So very early on, I started tracking, very early on in the coronavirus pandemic, I started watching this. We looked at this every week. We knew that this was going to happen here. We knew that people weren't going to get out and look at real estate. They couldn't get out and look at real estate. No one was interested in getting out and looking at real estate. I was a little surprised that early April that we started to move up at all, and much less this quickly. And as you can see, it's been pretty dramatic. In just over a couple of months, we're right at back to normal. And what you're looking at is comparing 2020 with 2019. So first thing we're seeing is in the last week or two, very quickly, people have gotten out and are really looking at real estate. So the next thing to look at is, okay, they're getting out of the house. Are they actually buying anything? Panama City Beach condos on this chart over here is the red line. Here are the percentages. So not surprising, we were down about 50% early in March and writing new contracts, meaning in that week we wrote 50% fewer contracts than we did in the previous year. The next couple of weeks we actually got by a little bit. People were still buying some condos. Then we started to really, I think things set in and we really started to go downhill. So we're off 72%, bottoming out at 79%. What I think is interesting, I didn't point out on the chart earlier, is the bottom of the showing activity was about an 85% spread year over year. And it's interesting to me that the contracts bottomed out at about 79%. So it's almost a direct correlation. So of course, as showings pick up, not surprising, new contracts pick up. 79%, we were down, then the next week 75%, then down 58, 46, 10, 9, and as of last week, considering everything that's going on, and Florida's not even really completely open yet, we just moved to phase 2 today, June 3rd, we were actually up last week 2% year over year on writing new contracts for condos. I can tell you what's not reflected here yet, and will be reflected in the next couple of weeks, is even more activity. We've had a very, very frenzied 10 days or so. It almost feels like 2004, 2005 all over again. I think the combination of the weather warming up, beach season upon us, add to that this feeling of wanting to just get out because of where we've been. It's all kind of the perfect storm coming together. So a lot of activity very quickly in the market. I don't know how long. I think some of that's driven by emotion. I don't know how long we can sustain that, but it's happening right now in a big way. If you look at just the condos that were built since 2006, so it's just the newer buildings. Back to this chart, I know you guys know that I love this, but this is a really another way to understand what's happening in the market. So now we're looking at the number of units for sale and the number of closings that are happening. The red line represents the number of units for sale in any given month. And remember, we've been watching this since 2018. Little by little, month over month, we're adding a few more units to the market for sale. We're having closings, but in a given month where you might have, just look at the numbers, where you might have 23 closings in a month, we added 46 to the market. In a month where we had 40 closings, we added 47 to the market. So those little differences are continuing to add up and adding supply to the market. Now, remember, we've been coming from a very, very hot market. We needed some supply in the market from one perspective. Months of inventory, remember, 4 to 5 months of inventory, I think, is the new norm, meaning neutral market. Prices stay pretty flat. Neither the buyer or the seller has a huge advantage either way in a negotiation. We've slowed down from a scorching hot market over a couple years to about neutral market territory at the beginning of 2020. After a couple of months of the coronavirus impact and not as much activity, not surprising that we jumped into dramatic buyer market territory. What will be interesting to see in June, I know where we're going to recover from this, just when 1 month, we're going to have a lot of contracts written this month. I'd be curious to see if we get all the way back to neutral market territory in 1 month or not. But it's important to remember, especially with something I'm going to tell you in a little bit. We've been trending for 2 years in this direction from a hot market. And remember, hot market is multiple offers, units selling quickly, and appreciation. Neutral market is flat market. Prices stay stable. Buyer market territory for an extended period of time, prices have to move down. We're heading in that direction. We're not there yet, but will be interesting to watch what happens the rest of the year in the condo market. To look at Grand Panama specifically, and we'll never have as much, when you look at just one project, there's not as much data to take in, so it's a little bit choppy. But Grand Panama is acting a little bit differently. There are fewer and fewer markets for units for sale, except look at what's happened over the last couple months, not surprising because of the coronavirus impact. Very generally, the Grand Panama market here, middle 2019, early 2020, had been pretty strong, maybe around neutral. It's definitely tipped into buyer market territory. Again, I think we're going to recover some in June. How much is the question, and for how long? Prices are holding pretty steady. We don't anticipate any kind of big crash in the condo market. There's too much equity in the condo market, but at best or at worst, prices probably hold for a while. At some point, we may be trending into the area where prices have to correct a little bit, 3%, 5%, maybe upwards, maybe a little more. May closings. We had 2 closings in May. Both were in Tower 1. $357,000 2-bedroom unit sold, and a 3-2 sold for $415,000. One thing I want to share with you real quick before we wrap this up, and I say this every time about this year for condo owners. If you're thinking about selling in 2020, it's very common mindset to sell at the end of rental season. Let me get all my heavy revenue in, and then I'll sell it. Think about this, and we just touched on it a little bit earlier. To have a closing, you need a contract. It takes about 30 days from contract to closing. So if you have a contract on your unit to sale, you get all the revenue in until closing. And it takes a little bit of time for a buyer to look at units, research units. Some buyers have been researching for a couple years. Some people started the process later than that, but some homework has to be done before people can decide what they want to see, before they can decide what to offer and negotiate, before you have a contract, before you close. If you start the process in early September, middle September, a good agent is building websites and ordering professional photography and things like that. That doesn't happen overnight. Depending on rental schedules, it can take a little while to get that stuff up and going. Normally for me, it's about a week. We just signed paperwork with a condo seller at the end of May that we won't be able to take photos until June 19th. A lot of rental companies have some new protocols in place because of coronavirus. And so on some of these days where there's check out, check in, check out, check in, they're not letting anybody in. We can't show units. We can't photograph units. So think about this. If you have a condo you put up for sale in early July, and a condo buyer is sitting there doing their homework, knowing they're going to come down August to September when these units are more vacant, they're already doing their homework. They're already deciding what they want to see. They're looking at photos. They're doing their research. If you got a contract on day one, you'd be pretty happy with the contract because if you accepted something on day one, you liked the price. But it's probably about a 30-day closing. You're probably not closing till the beginning of August. If it takes you 2 weeks to get a contract from putting it on the market in January, now you're closing middle of August. If it takes you a month, which is very possible or even likely with having such a busy rental schedule in July. Now you're closing at the end of August, and you're getting past most of heavy revenue anyway. So just think about this. If you're thinking about selling in 2020, think about starting the process. Have conversations with agents. Start the process sooner rather than later. Late June, early July. Get it out there. All these buyers who are floating around, even though the unit might not get shown a lot in July, buyers are doing their homework from other places, and they come in mass. September and October are very good closing months. August and September are very good for us for writing contracts. People are doing their research before then. Get on the market. And think about this too. You know, if you're looking at potential of where the market might head third and fourth quarter economically, we have concerns about coronavirus flare-ups. What could that do to a national economy, a local economy, people deciding to buy a condo? We have a presidential election that has some volatility. Sometimes we all tighten up the purse strings a little bit, and maybe we wait until the end of after the election before we make a big purchase. And generally look at what the market has been doing. The condo market's been softening for 2 years from a very hot market. It's been appreciating for 5 or 6 years now. At some point, you know, we've been on pause with pricing for a little bit. Prices have held pretty steady for a good 6-7 months now. If anything, we could be due for a little pullback. How much? We think still, again, there's a lot of equity in the markets. We don't think it's going to pull back a lot. But all of those things could lead to 2020 being a very good year to sell, take some equity. If you're doing that, think about starting the process sooner. Long term for Panama City Beach, there's still a lot of infrastructure coming in. I think there's still a lot of growth here long term. So even if prices do pull back, you know, a few years down the road, there's still a lot of good things happening. So if the condo for you is a long term 5, 8, 10-year hold, then I think a little bit of a downturn in price for a couple years, that doesn't hurt you. But think about if this is the year to take some equity out, start the process sooner. Hope this guy, sorry guys, I know that's a lot. You can hit pause, rewind. If you have any questions on the graphs, I know I talked a lot pretty quickly and through all this. If you have any questions on the concepts, just give me a call, shoot me a text. I know that's 12 minutes of a lot of data, but it's important, I think, for you all to understand the market so you can make good decisions going forward. Hope this helps. Be safe. We'll be back next month with another update.